This week on the show, we talk Hurricane Harvey, where have we been for the last month, and much more. This week on Legion of Dads.
Dad's home.
Hi, Dad.
Lord of the manor, king of the castle.
Well, that seems appropriate.
I am a dad.
We are dads.
We are many. We are one. We are the Legion of Dads. The Legion.
Dads.
Hello.
We are the Legion of Dads.
Join us.
The Legion of Dads.
An entire legion.
Great, Dad.
We are the Legion of Dads.
Daddy-o.
From now on, we'll be known as the Legion.
So we are many.
We acknowledge this is an appropriate metaphor. We are Legion.
We are the Legion of Dads.
You are not alone. We are all in this together now.
Hello and welcome to Legion of Dads, a show for the modern dad. We talk movies, comics, video games, and how to be a great dad. I'm your host, Wyatt Kegel, and with me I have my co-host, Kenneth Dupuis. Kenneth, how are you?
Hey, Wyatt. Hey, Legion.
And we have father of four, Richard. Richard, how are you?
Super duper.
This is one of our first shows back. If Legion, if you did not hear our episode where I did the little intro saying why we had been gone for so long, just wanted to let you know we are actually based out of Texas, and I'm sure all of you know that Hurricane Harvey hit Texas and hit us pretty hard and put us, the three of us, in different. Actually, probably all three of us had three different experiences and three different levels of, I don't know what we want to call it. Displacement doesn't seem to be adequate. But we, all three of us have a different level to our story. And I think that's what we want to talk about this week. As dads, we do have a certain responsibility to our families, to our communities. And we wanted to talk about that. And we wanted to kind of share our stories. And hopefully maybe that helps if you went through something very similar to this, or maybe you can at least understand where your neighbor is coming from that maybe was affected. Richard, I know that you probably, out of all three of us, I mean, I can speak to this. You were hit the hardest in all manner of speaking. And I'm just going to give you the mic and let you tell your story because I think it's an important one that the Legion needs to hear.
The last time we recorded a show, Kenneth and I were actually joking about the fact that Harvey was hitting Houston. And at the time we were real kind of nonchalant about it, about how we might lose power. Now, this was at the end of August. We're recording this now, at the end of September, because just things have been chaotic for the last month. In that last episode, like I said, Harvey had just hit Houston. And one thing no one expected, the thing you have to know about hurricanes in Southeast Texas, this region, is almost, they're expected.
They're unpredictable.
Well, and that's the thing. We get hit by hurricanes all the time. Some of them you evacuate for, and some of them you sleep through. Now, in the last, I'll say 12 years, because my son is 11 years old, we've evacuated 3 times. 12 years ago, our area was hit by Hurricane Rita. We had to evacuate. And then later, a couple of years later, I think probably when my daughter was born, shortly after my daughter was born, we had to evacuate for Ike, which hit us again. And then, and there have been hurricanes between now and then. Like I said, Umberto was one that we all slept through. People throw hurricane parties. Sometimes it's just a day off work. Sometimes it's
a lot of days off work.
Sometimes it's serious. Yeah. Sometimes it's life-threatening. It's everything you own is lost. Well, this was one of those times. Right now, I don't have a timeline in front of me. It's all kind of a blur, but I can kind of give you a quick rundown of the events that happened. So Harvey hit Houston, and what it did more than anything else, well, actually it hit Rockport, and really just wiped them off the map. But then what it did was it hung over Houston. And we don't live in Houston. My parents live in Houston, but what it did was it hung over Houston and it dropped an unimaginable, unprecedented amount of water on Houston. And then, if I remember right, it went back out to sea and then hit us and did the same thing again. And that's kind of where
Even more water.
yeah, and that's
was it actually more water than even in Houston?
well,
Yeah, not by a whole lot, but yeah, I believe it was more.
When you're talking trillions of gallons of water, another 1,000 is not.
and I've seen like the rainfall that between I think Katrina and Hurricane Harvey. Harvey was like 3 times more rain than Hurricane Katrina. And we all remember what that did to New Orleans. But New Orleans is a different situation. It's levees, they're underwater, like that's a totally different thing. But you're going to see some similar things happen here. So Inviter,
that thing hit 88 miles per hour.
that's right. You saw some serious we got like 50 inches of water. And what was real bad was, much like Houston, once the ground is soaked, once the dams are full, once all this water, you get hit by all this water at once, it's got nowhere to go but up. So this brings us back to our last recording. Kenneth and I were recording our previous episodes. We were joking about losing power. Wyatt was traveling, but he had made plans for his family to get out of the way of the hurricane. And Wyatt, let's come back to you in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Take a break.
So
You gave him the reins.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
You're
after-
segueing
I
to me,
know,
and you're like,
I know.
no,
Almost. So after we finished that recording, we joked about losing power. When Hurricane Harvey came back and hit Southeast Texas, and I forget what day it was. Maybe it was Tuesday. I think we lost power. Now I have a 4-month-old child and 3 kids and a dog. Now keep all of this in mind, because obviously these numbers are going to play out later on. Of course, I still have 4 kids.
Let's
and a
make
dog,
sure that everybody
but
knows that you still
it's
have all
just
those.
this is one of those factors that complicates everything. So we lose power on, I don't know, Tuesday, and we were fine. We had all the baby water we needed. The rain was coming. Sometimes it was insane, but we were just going to ride it out. We had all the food we needed. We had enough baby water and formula. One thing that we did do was we lost power, which that eliminates any sort of cooking. So we were looking at what food we had, and we just started like rationalizing, all right, well, we can have cereal. We can, let's eat fruit. These things are going to go bad. Let's eat them now. These things might last longer. We'll be okay. We kind of went through that mentality. One thing we also did is that I have a grill, a camping grill, and some propane little canisters. So we would make, a big thing of macaroni. Maybe we'd make a hot meal. We did sandwiches. We made what we had last as long as we could. That's how we were going to ride out Harvey.
Which was something that, because I grew up in that area, I know that's something that you did. I mean, we all kind of, that's a tried and true method. That's not something that you guys were like, oh, we'll make it up as you go. This is something that you had lived through before. You had done this. This was a tried and true practice.
And it wasn't crazy. I mean, it was just, that's what you do. We're just going to ride this out. No big deal. Couple of days without power.
Right. I just want to bring that up for people that maybe live on the East Coast or other places that you're like, why wouldn't you leave? Because I hear that all the time. Like, why don't you leave? It's like, look, no, this is part of, it's kind of part of our culture. It's just part of the thing that happens here. So it's just like an ice storm in the north. It's like, look, you don't evacuate every time that a blizzard's coming.
And this storm got so powerful so quick, and then and then it like Super Saiyaned.
Yeah.
You know, it went and got more powerful after it, you know. So it was just kind of like no one ever expected it, at least where we live. Not necessarily, I mean, for you in Houston, they knew they were going to get bands of rain there at the last minute because it started getting really powerful, but it still wasn't enough time. But for us, we were like, okay, it's hitting Houston. We're going to get some rain. We're not going to get crazy amounts of rain like we got. We probably going to lose power. And that's what everyone around here probably thought, or we're going to have some wind damage.
Yeah.
So, Richard, now you've gone through, you guys have made your plan you've made stock of your resources, and you're going to write it out. So what happened next?
At the end of Wednesday, the rains stopped, and we had some street level flooding, but the entrances in and out of our neighborhood were underwater. But there was still dry ground. Like I could still drive my car around the neighborhood, but I couldn't get out. And I was like, all right, well, if that's the worst that this is going to be, like I can make my way to the store. Like I can wade through the water. Like that's not a problem. I mean, it'll be uncomfortable, but that's fine. We'll just ride it out. Well, Wednesday is also when they, and this is the story that I believe. I don't know if it's true. I mean, I'm pretty certain it is. But Wednesday is also the day that they started to release the dams. And I believe that it's the releasing of the water from the dams is what flooded my entire neighborhood and our entire community. It wasn't the rain. Well, it wasn't the direct rainfall on our houses. It was all this water from the dams that just wiped out our entire community. Because when the rain stopped, like I said, in and out of our neighborhood was blocked, but it was only street level flooding. And the way that my house is positioned, if you're standing on the street, my house is like 4 feet up higher than the street level, just the way my yard is. And so we looked like we were safe. Well, they released the dams, and I was like, all right, Marilee, which is my wife. I was like, we need to, we're going to keep an eye on this. If the water keeps rising, and at the time, like I said, it started at the street. And this was Wednesday night, I was like, if it touches the slab of our house, which our house is way up, that's when we'll leave. And so we went to bed Wednesday night. Now, at one point, I went to go walk the dog in the middle of the night, and I was walking him down the driveway. And before I realized it, my foot was in water. And I was like, man, this water's coming and it's not stopping. Well, we go to bed Wednesday and we wake up on Thursday. Sure enough, the water was touching our slab. And I was like, all right, well, I guess, I said we're going to leave now. So, but the problem was, and here's one, in retrospect, one of the mistakes that I made, I believe, is that by letting the water, waiting this long, I had eliminated any sort of possibility of mobilization. I had no way to drive my cars out of my driveway and drive, no mobility. I had no way to move. We were stranded, and the only way out of my neighborhood was by boat. And so my cars were useless, and they couldn't go anywhere. And that is a huge factor. That was a huge handicap. Had I left, and this would have been days before. This would have been before the dams, before they released the dams. Maybe even before Tuesday. I mean, before our neighborhood, the in and out was blocked. We could have left with our cars. And I say that because we lost our cars in the flood. By the time it was all said and done, when we left our house, we had to be boated out, and it looked like our houses were on rivers, that every street was just rivers. It was water from this guy's lawn to the next guy's lawn, and all that was left was houses. So we got boated out, Now, long story short, and this is still going to be a long story. When it was all said and done, the water continued to rise, and by the time it crested, there was 2 feet of water inside my house. Fortunately, that morning on Thursday, we had about an hour to prepare. Someone came and knocked on our door. They were going to ride us out by boat. So we grabbed, everything that was important. We put it up as high as we could. We put it up on kitchen counters. We put it up on bunk beds. There's a lot of things that I think we could have done better. Fortunately for us, we only got 2 feet of water. So everything that we did put on bunk beds or on top of a bed or on the kitchen counter, that was high enough to protect those items. But if you look around your house and just imagine a 2-foot water line and everything that would consume, you lose every piece of furniture, you lose your kids' beds, you lose every wall, every floor, you lose, just everything. I'm glad it wasn't a complete loss, that we didn't lose absolutely everything, but 2 feet of water through every room in your house, every appliance, just everything, like it's pretty close to everything.
And then also something that a lot of people, I think, forget whenever they think 2 foot of water in a house. I think they think that it's distilled water from the tap. This is river water. This is bayou water. It is sewage. It is not something that you want in your house in a small amount. So it being and it kind of permeating the entire house and sitting there.
And it's stagnant.
It's stagnant. It's just not a fun, it's not something that you want in your house in any way, shape, or form.
And I have to give some mad props to both of you guys, because both of you guys, when after the fact, when it was time to come back and help and rip out, y'all were there to help me, clean up and tear out our house. And I thank you guys for that. But let me continue from there. I'll try to speed this up because it's a long story.
You were boated out, but then weren't you just boated to like the end of your neighborhood? But then you had to get into a dump truck.
That's right. We were boated out to the end of our neighborhood because, like I said, any way in or out was blocked. Well, that got us to the next high point, but there was still a low point in the main road. So we're waiting there at a car wash, and a dump truck rolls by with some police officers in it. And I was like, "Hey, where are you guys going?" They're like, "Wherever you want us to go." So we hitch a ride to our church across town, where they don't have power. Nobody has power, but we were able to eat a hot breakfast. Now, while we were there, there was announcements being made about a mandatory evacuation. Now, there's things I don't like about mandatory evacuations. A lot of times they will send you somewhere with no means of coming back. At least that's the way I understand it. So once we got to the church and we started hearing that news, we had my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, come pick us up. She lived nearby. She was unaffected by the flood water, but didn't have power, but they had a generator. And so we went to stay with them for a few days. So that's the 6 of us with a 4-month-old baby. That's my dog, crammed into a house that honestly they weren't expecting us. Plus my in-laws were there too. My in-laws live just around the corner from us in the same neighborhood. Now, they've lived there since 1978. Their house may be the lowest point in the neighborhood. They back up to a lake or a pond. They have never had water in their house. In 50 years, well, 40 years, whatever. They've never had 30 years. They've never had water in their house. But this was different. They have a split level home, and they had 7 to 8 feet of water in their first floor, their garage, their one of their living spaces, 8 feet of water, and that was high enough that it hit. They had a foot of water on their middle floor, so 2/3 of their house is wiped out. And like I said, just imagine what that would touch. It knocks out everything. Your kitchen is knocked out. Your dining room, your living room, your vehicles. Just so now we are living with my sister-in-law, our dog, 4 kids. I mean, we got like 10 people crammed in a house. Well, we do this for a couple of days, and we are, we're stepping on each other's toes. Like it's an uncomfortable situation, but we're making do. We're family.
Well, at this point, the water that was in your home for those couple of days didn't go anywhere, right?
No. I mean, the water, I mean, probably by now it's reaching its like cresting point. We were still waiting for the water to go down. So, I mean, I think we had water in our house for like a week. So it was still, the Neches, which is a river nearby, hadn't crested yet. And when it did crest, it was like 15 feet over its flood stage. So we're staying at our in-laws, and we're waiting. Well, things are looking worse and worse. We've evacuated before. In one of the previous evacuations, it took us 14 hours to drive what is normally an hour and a half. And in this process of driving 14 hours, my wife was pregnant at the time, very pregnant. We almost, and you saw people everywhere running out of gas. There was no gas anywhere. Well, it was starting to turn into that situation. You're starting to see resources are running out. Walmart, there's no place to buy anything. Nobody has power. They can't do anything.
And you also don't have any kind of transportation now that you are on dry land, but you are still landlocked because your cars are back at the house underwater.
I am now relying completely on someone else for transportation because I have lost, and I ended up losing both my vehicles in the flood. I had a small car that was totally flooded, and we had a Suburban that we thought might be high enough, but it was still affected. We lost both vehicles, which is another big hit. And now we don't have transportation.
Yeah, because you live in an area that's all car styled. It's not public transportation.
I ran into somebody from New York the other day that was trying to call an Uber, and I was like, buddy, this is not he couldn't get it to work. And I was like, this is not an Uber place. Another thing that's happening is I-10, which is the major thoroughfare, is flooded. You can't pass I-10, and the water is still rising. We see a window. There's an opportunity for us to go from where we were to, we have my wife's cousins live in a nearby town, about 30 minutes, a regular drive from where we live, called Nederland. Well, we take about an hour-long drive, the longest way possible, honestly. But it was the driest way possible to get to Nederland. They said, hey, we'll take y'all into our homes. And honestly, we're still living there. It's been a month, and we are still living with my wife's cousins in Nederland. And they have graciously, I mean, because one of the factors in evacuating is we have 3 kids, and my older kids are controllable. They know how to be well behaved. But a 4-month-old is a 4-month-old and will cry and gets ear infections and is a 4-month-old. But we also have our dog. And that's just another compounding factor that when we are graciously being invited into someone's home, or if we're, like we were with my sister-in-law, if they weren't expecting us and we just show up, like, this is a real inconvenience that not only do we have 3 people and 3 kids and a baby, but also a dog. Like, inconvenience doesn't even begin to describe what that is.
Thank you very much for sharing that with the Legion. No, because that's not, you're still in the middle of it. I mean, that's one thing that I think that because of Florida being hit and then the fires in California and then the earthquakes in Mexico and then the next hurricane coming and hitting Puerto Rico, and just like it just never stops. And something that I think a lot of people, you hear this and you're like, no, that there's still people being affected, and that whenever the TV cameras go away and when Anderson Cooper goes away, they forget that there's still people in the middle of this and that there's still communities that are going to have to be rebuilt in some form or fashion. Now, so thank you for doing this show, period, like coming up, because I know that you're like, I could just be sleeping at this point. I'm sure there's maybe other things that you could be doing, but I hope that we're giving you a little bit of brevity from the pain, from the concerns and stuff
it's
like
a couple
that.
things. We try to make this a regular thing. This is a little bit of, in a weird way, a bit of normalcy, getting back to a regular routine. And of course, hanging out with you guys is fun. So when we're packed in with a bunch of kids and a baby, it's fun to get out and just hang out with you guys for a while.
Let's go back, and because there was a couple of things in your story that I want to talk to you about, just things that kind of you said that that maybe the Legion can learn from, because this is a very unique experience in some respects, but I think it's also something that as dads we need to be ready for the unknown. Natural disasters happen, like we were saying, earthquakes, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzards, snowstorms. Like you still need to be prepared. One thing that you brought up was that you were like, I'm going to wait until the water hit my foundation. Now, I think I would have, in your situation, I think I would have been like you. I was like, okay, then I will worry. Then I will make the decision. But once that point hit, it sounds like you had a realization that, oh no, I have forgotten something about transportation. I have taken for granted that I had transportation out of here until I was past that point. So can you talk to me about that? Like, what should, when you are in that kind of situation as a dad, as a father, what should you be thinking about? Is transportation maybe just as important as food and water and having an exit strategy?
Exactly. That's one of they talk about the like basic needs of life: food, shelter, safety, something else.
Yeah, food, water, and shelter are your three.
Yeah. But one thing, and this didn't occur to me obviously until after the fact, but because we left in the way we did, we were no longer in control of our transportation. We no longer had a choice in where we were going or how we were going to get there. Those decisions were being made by someone else. Once we got onto that boat, and even before that, once the neighborhood was flooded in a way that I could not get out with my car or our Suburban, any means of mobility or transportation under like any plan that I had to move around is now off the table. Because once we got to the front of the neighborhood, once they dropped us off from that boat in the front of the neighborhood, now what? Now I got a dog in a cage and some backpacks full of clothes. And where do we go now? Oh, there's a dump truck coming by. Let's hop on that. Oh, I need my sister-in-law to come pick me up and then later drive me to Nederland. Like, By the time I had waited for the entrance and exit to the neighborhood to be flooded was when my transportation options were taken off the table.
And I want to make sure that I phrase this correctly, because in no means do I want to like put question to your actions or anything like that. I'm more of just trying to learn.
No, it's fine. I mean, I'm questioning everything myself, but it's
sure. But also, like, I want to just tell you that I think that you did as a great job. And I think that you did. No, I mean, seriously, because at the end of the day, all your kids and even your dog and your wife, your wife still loves you and is still there, and your kids are still alive and they're still there, and even your dog's alive, which not everybody has that. So
I know, and that's the truth.
Mission accomplished, my friend, and you did a good job there. So but where I'm coming from is only to how can we better it. What are the questions that, this is a debriefing. This is like military. This is a debriefing. Exactly. How could this was a mission accomplished, but how can we make it better? And how can we learn it? Because one of the things that I did hear a lot in your story was almost like grace of God kind of things, like this dump, these guys knocked on our door and they had a boat.
Absolutely.
And then you went, and then there was a dump truck, and those are wonderful things. And we should pray for those things. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but also we should also plan as much as we can so we don't rely on grace.
As a dad and someone, I think the area we are come from and the way we kind of handle our families, we're looked to make decisions that are definitely going to affect everyone in our family, especially in a time of crisis. And I think that, like, what he said is true, is that if you lose control of your transportation, there's not a whole lot of choice you can make after that. So maybe that is the best takeaway.
Like, you've given up a lot of your choices. Yeah.
If you can get out and get to safety, whether that's 2 hours away, an hour away, a neighborhood away, if whatever your plan is, if you have one, and it gets to the point where that plan is no longer executable, I think that that's the time to redirect.
If we go back to Richard's, scenario, him seeing that, okay, if we leave in the next 2 hours, we can still get out in the Suburban.
Well, and we can still save the car. We still have options. And once we lose the car, not only have we lost options, but now you've put yourself in a financial bind and a logistical bind of afterwards. Well, now what? Now I don't have a car to drive to work. I don't have a car to drive my kids to school or to drive and get food.
Would you say that, was it that you just didn't act fast enough? If you could go back and do one thing over, would it be to pack everybody up in the car whenever the water got a little too high and was like, you know what, the Suburban could barely make it, but I think we can make it through. Let's go now.
The only way I would have done it differently was if I knew what was going to happen. We were ready to ride it out. Like, I thought my plan was executable until it wasn't. Like, should I have evacuated my family when there was some street flooding, like before my neighborhood was inaccessible? Like, how do you make that? Like, that could happen during any rainstorm. How do you know that this is the time that, and to be honest, to me, the way that I understand it, it wasn't even the hurricane. I mean, it was the hurricane, but it was the releasing of that dam that was the unexpected event that I couldn't foresee. So to say if I could go back and change anything, I don't know that I would have, only because I could never have foreseen the water to rise.
In all fairness, too, you actually could have been back in time. You could have come back because the storm had passed.
Yeah,
you could have You could have driven back in. That's the sad part. You could have driven back in, and then on Wednesday and been like, okay, well, this water's kind of high, but it'll be fine. They released the dam, and then on Thursday, you're still waking up to water in your bed.
Looking back on it, I think my plan was sound. However, I have learned, I think maybe the lesson I've learned or should learn is that is what we've been talking about. Once you are landlocked with your transportation, all other options have been knocked off the table, and now you are at the mercy of just everyone.
Is having a plan in place with other people, or having places to call, having even a list of phone numbers of places to call, would that be something that should be maybe in like a bug out emergency bag?
I think so, because
because you were thinking on the fly a lot, but I was just, what resources were you not, and not that, you were adapting to the situation as it was shown to you. It wasn't that you didn't think this through. You're just like, this literally has never happened before.
That's right.
But to that point, what materials would have been, what assets could you have had on hand that would have made your life easier? Because I'm sure Google didn't work. iPhones and all of our modern conveniences probably were not as fast. Would having Red Cross numbers, even though I know the Red Cross is not in everybody's favor right now, or just having phone numbers of people that that you've talked to about this stuff before, or shelters. If you were making a bug out bag, an emergency bug out bag today, what would you have in there? That's
a really good question.
Would it be smart to go get, because I've got a couple of like spiral notepads that are waterproof that you can go get at REI or any kind of camping supply place. If you had one of those, and in there you just wrote down a bunch of emergency numbers of family members, numbers of people that you could call that you may have talked to before, or maybe even you pre-call them before. It's like, hey, I'm just checking in. We're thinking about this and that. Would it be cool if we call upon you guys again, so that you're not inconveniencing these people on a whim? I don't know. Is this making sense, or is this smarter? Am I over compensating? I'm asking you guys.
I'm with you.
I haven't been in this situation.
I mean, I'm sure some pre-planning, of course, would have helped. But yeah, I was just thrust into the situation and adapting as things happened. I can tell you some of the things that we did well, that perhaps someone can glean some knowledge from that. One thing in kind of along the same lines, when we were prepared for only a loss of power, we had flashlights and candles and lighters and batteries, and food, and we had a means to prepare food. We had the grill with the propane canteens. Like in those aspects, we were prepared, and we even had, because we were at home and we had different. Everybody was comfortable. Like we were comfortable. Everybody had their own room. We had board games that we were keeping busy while the power was out. One thing that I found, like I said before, we've evacuated twice before, but this time was different. And one of the biggest changes this time was Facebook. Facebook made a huge difference this time. Facebook Live, even though we were without power, we were able to watch and get the latest news from our news stations through Facebook Live broadcasts. That we hadn't had during previous evacuations. Before, you had to get to a computer and log on to the website, and just things were different only 8 years ago, not that long ago. But social networking, and everybody kind of, like our neighborhood has a Facebook page, so everybody communicating through that, and just locally, that raised our awareness of, is Walmart open? Where can I go to get water? Like a lot of this stuff was on Facebook. And in that way, that was completely different than the last times we'd done this. And you said, I brought my phone with me. And one of the fortunate things when we went to my brother-in-law's, he did have a generator. Now that's another great item to have, a generator and plenty of gasoline to run the generator, because if you're just going to ride it out, because we all had our phones plugged in and charged, and we're able to text and communicate. And so we're not in a situation where we don't know what's going on. There's no fog of war. We know what's going on. We know where we can go. We know what people are doing. We know what routes along I-10 you can go, what roads are closed. Because our news station was broadcasting like 24/7, because everyone needed to know this information. They were flying people in from like other states, news people, to relieve our news people so they could go home and take a shower and get some sleep. And so in that way, it was completely different.
If you're staying, that's good, but maybe those ARC batteries, just having a way to keep your cell phone powered for a couple of charges would not be a bad idea in that bug out.
And one
bag.
thing I've been meaning to do for years, and I haven't done it yet, because my son and I go camping often. And one of the things I've been meaning to get is a solar power battery charger. I've got some, I've got my eye on, but I haven't made that jump yet. Because when you're camping out in the woods, sometimes you don't have any signal. And it's that search for a signal that kills your battery more than anything. So if I had a way to power my phone just based on the sun, a renewable source of energy, I think that would be a game changer. I've been meaning to get one of those. I probably will one of these days. And when I do, I'll add it to our RecomenDADtions.
Yeah, that needs to be a recommendation.
One thing I was also thinking about is an alternate mode of transportation. Had we stayed at home and had we been able to ride it out, if I had maybe like a canoe or a kayak, some sort of lightweight transportation that I could maneuver across, because once we got outside of our neighborhood, there was another body of water blocking us from going from point A to point B. If I had something that I could carry across or something, I would have been able to go to the store or resupply, and if we were able to ride it out. But of course, the water kept rising. That wasn't feasible.
The thing that I hear from you, Richard, is transportation, and to look at your situation, whatever your situation is. If you're up north and blizzards are an issue, if you're down south and hurricanes, if you're in the Midwest with tornadoes, it's like it just happens. But look at whatever kind of hits your area, because all parts of the country have an issue that they deal with from time to time. But look at it and always make sure that transportation, that you have some kind of mobility, because that sounds like that's what's going to kill you at the end of the day, is not having that choice. It limits so much of your ability to do things.
It'll handicap you in a severe way.
Because you are now out of the house, your desk is not there. You don't have access to your paperwork and all the mortgage and the bills and stuff like that. And, it's completely displaced. How would you say somebody should reconcile that? Or how did you reconcile that? Did you put everything up online? Did you put stuff in a waterproof container? Like, how did you, all your important papers and stuff like that?
I think
how
for
did you
Christmas,
deal with those?
And it was just this past Christmas, I asked my dad for one of the lamest things, but it was something I thought was important. And that was a fireproof and waterproof safe. It's not something that we hide. I mean, it's not like a safe that's at the bottom of a closet. If it was, it would have been underwater. or under a bed, it's actually kind of something we just leave out in the open, because it's what it's there for is to do exactly what it was made to do: protect our important documents from a fire or from water. So we had our waterproof, fireproof safe on top of a piece of furniture. Inside it are all of our birth certificates. It's got the titles to our cars, the deeds to our house. It's got passports. It's even got a hard drive. The last hard drive I put in there, which is just full of like 4 years of pictures and videos. But again, it was up high, so it was never submerged. But when I was able to get back to the house, I grabbed it, and now it's with us. So now we have all those important documents with us. I would love to make another.
Well, it doesn't sound like a lame gift now.
No. I mean, it was a total practical gift. It's just not like, no bells and whistles. It's not fun. It's a fireproof, waterproof safe. And it's a Century safe. I got the one that's specifically large enough for an 8.5 by 11 document. I didn't want to get a safe because they have some that are like smaller and you have to fold documents. I didn't want to do that. So that was one of my more reasonable birthday or Christmas requests. But it was high enough that it wasn't submerged, but that was the plan.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I think, could be talked about in terms of just preparing for any kind of natural disaster or storm. And, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Richard in terms of the evacuation record. I evacuated for like 1 or 2 other storms in my life. But I think after this storm, people are going to, flooding like that had never happened in our area in like 100 years. So I think it's going to take people rethinking how they prepare for a storm and whether or not they would even evacuate. And I think that, I'm more likely to probably evacuate in a situation now than I had been previously, now that, especially that I have kids. We didn't do that this time, but I would have been in pretty much the same situation as Richard. We didn't end up getting water in our house, but in terms if we had, I was just as prepared as he was. We had food and stuff in case the electricity, we were just going to ride it out. What electricity is going to go, we might have a tree fall. That's what we were prepared for. We were not prepared for a flood. And I think there's a lot of things that, whatever kind of disaster you think could be coming your way, look up on some information as to what it could be. Could it be a flood? And what could that mean for your home, for your kids, for your transportation ahead of time so you can formulate a better plan, whether that's killing all the breakers in your house, getting sandbags, leaving before it's too late type of situations.
Yeah, because all those things will, there's so many people that lost their house, not because of the flood. They lost the whole thing because the flood then started a fire that then burned down their house. So, yeah, and just as the dad, as the father in the house, we need to take that leadership position and kind of think through these scenarios as much as we can. I mean, I feel like I'm extremely fortunate that I have the ability just to tell my family, get in the car, we're going to Dallas. And we've got family up there that we can then bunk with for a week and just ride out the storm there in 100% comfort. That's not a situation that everybody has, but you need to think about it. You need to think about your plan. If you are going to do the evacuation plan, figure out where you need to, have a plan going through, because Texas, I would argue, has some of the best evacuation policies and plans in place.
We do now.
Because we keep messing it up, and then we go like, well, let's not do that again. And then we fix it. And then the next one, we make a few more mistakes and we go, well, let's not do that again. And then we fix those. And, we're not making the same mistakes over and over again in terms of evacuation.
One more thing I just want to touch on just from my situation is I kind of touched on it before that we have 4 kids and a dog, and
now I don't think you mentioned that before.
I know. When you're evacuating with 4 kids and a dog, it's very complicated. I mean, you can't just go to a hotel. When you're evacuating with a pet, like it complicates everything. Where you can go, even if you could go to a shelter. Like when we went to the church, they didn't allow the pets in the church, so we had to leave the pet outside, which was fine. But if we were going to be staying there for days, like
it's not fine then. Yeah,
it's not fine. And I've evacuated with pets before, and it's
something to think about ahead of time, just like your kids.
Definitely something to think about.
You know, if you need to have that animal in your evacuation plan, whether it's I'm going here, here's how I'm getting there, and here's when I'm leaving, and yes, they can accommodate the pet.
And I think you should always have a plan. Like, all right, if something were to happen, we're going to go here. We were kind of playing it by ear, and we were just like, well, of course we'll go to my sister-in-law's. Like, she's like that. It just seemed obvious to us that we are in need. She'll take us in. We kind of forced our way in there. I mean, they graciously accepted us, but we definitely put them in an awkward situation. Maybe some pre-planning would have prepared us better, rather than just winging it.
Kind of bringing up before
the day of.
Right. I mean, you go and you call them up and go like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Would this be okay? And I do think that 90% of families would be like, yeah, sure. Obviously, even if it's just for politeness sake.
One more cool thing I saw one wise thing I saw some people do, and it's connected to transportation. If you have 2 vehicles, I was watching people, they would take their second vehicle if they were leaving, and they would put their second vehicle on high ground. They would find some place. Some people, I'm pretty sure, were breaking the law and putting it, like, abandoning their car on an overpass, but putting your car at some high place. So, yeah, exactly. So that when the flooding comes, if you lose your house and you lose everything, at least you still have your car, and you can still get to work. You can still get to the store. You can still get your kids. You can still escape. I mean, I thought that was real wise. And if I could do it over again, that might be something I would do as my second vehicle is, hey, we're going to evacuate. Let's leave our car at the highest point we can find. And then, like, you meet me there and we'll go from there.
Pay the $50 ticket.
Well, that too. But I thought that was pretty smart.
Well, gentlemen, I think we need to leave that there for right now. I do think that this is a subject that we need to come back to. One, we want to get an update on Richard and his family and see how they're doing. But also, I think, let's talk, that bug out bag. Let's talk about other things that we can do. Because, I know that I have one. We'll come back to this subject because I think that there's a lot to unpack. And I think that there is a lot that the Legion can learn from our situation. Also, a lot that we can learn so that next time, if something comes up like this, we are better prepared to ride this out as much as we can. So, RecomenDADtions. Kenneth, what do you got for us this week?
All right, I'm switching it up a little bit this week in that my recommendation is a recommendation.
Oh, go on.
And that is for the Sonos Play Bar.
Oh, wow. You flipped it on me because I was talking about before in the show. And I was like, what a twist. That you have a Sonos. I've wanted one. So tell us why we shouldn't get one.
Okay. Well, look, first off, it's got a great many things about it
because you're
going
to save me $700. This is awesome.
Yeah. Look, I bought this to replace basically a 7.1 surround sound amplifier that I was only using 3.1 channels on, and it looked bulky and terrible in my living room. And I just wanted to get a sound bar. Well, I started looking around. I wanted something that was pretty intuitive, worked with my phone, and I found the Sonos Play Bar. And it packs a lot of punch in terms of the sound quality. And that is not something that I am putting down. The sound quality is great. The aesthetics are great. The functionality in terms of how you can use your phone to play stuff is great. The customer service is great. They update via Wi-Fi on the app. It says, hey, your speaker needs to update.
All right, my $700 is starting to itch like it's getting out of my pocket. Why don't you like it?
In terms of why I don't like it, could be a very specific reason, and that is that I'm a cinephile. I like movies, and I like to try to hear them the best possible way. The Play Bar is designed to kind of be retrofitted with their speaker, their subwoofer, and then you can buy their Play One speakers to do surround sound, and it's all wireless through Wi-Fi, and you got a surround sound system. My problem with it is no DTS support, period. Only Dolby, and only Dolby 5.1. No Dolby 7.1, no Dolby Vision, no Dolby Atmos, any of those things.
So for $700, that's a pretty steep price tag for something that does not cover all the spectrum.
And now what that means is first off, that means that because it doesn't support DTS, because it's supporting only 5.1 and no 7.1 or higher systems, that means they don't even need an HDMI connection in the back. So you're only getting the optical audio connection, which is okay. Most of the stuff I owned already had optical audio out. It was great. I already had it. I had cables lying around. I just plugged it up. But what I had to do then was all the players and streaming things I needed to do to use with it, I had to make sure that either the player or my TV would transcode whatever signal that the media I was watching in would then go to 5.1 Dolby. And I've got it all set at home. It's working fine. PlayStation 3 and 4 both do that. That's what I'm playing discs media with at the time. There is some talk of the future, maybe some DTS support coming out for it. There is some talk of them having an add-on thing that you can buy. They have a thing called a Connect that they could put an HDMI slot, which then would give you 7.1, because 7.1 won't go over optical. But right now it's like a mixed bag. I love the functionality of everything about it in terms of using it, but in terms of hooking things to it, it is completely terrible. I don't know why they don't support DTS. And that's my beef.
Okay, so
it's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag. So it's a good buy if you are okay with those limitations.
If you're an audiophile, like you just want to listen to really good music, you don't mind it being in anything you watch being in stereo, or just dealing with the Dolby, or you're just buying it for music, it is great. I mean, it has a built-in voice enhancement that is one of the best I've ever heard, and a built-in quiet mode for bass sounds and high treble sounds that is one of the best I've ever heard.
Okay.
The manufacturer quality is magnificent. But
all right, so you're just making me now question the idea of maybe.
I'm hoping they send an update for it. I'm not taking it back to the store.
Right, because that could potentially be fixed in software. Is that what you're hoping?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, that's what
I'm hoping.
All right, so that's an interesting. That's a new recommendation for us. Where it's
what did I say? RecomenDADtions.
Well, actually, it sounds like more of a RecomenDADtion. I don't know. This is We're really killing.
Depends
this
on who
metaphor.
you are.
We're killing this pun. Richard, what
maybe convention?
All right, I'm done. That's it. Richard, what do you have for us this week? Bring back some sanity to this
All
clip.
right, so I work in a job where I have to wear a tie every day, and in the past, I have used like tie pins, and that involves piercing your tie and chaining it to maybe a shirt button, and ultimately you're ruining your ties. Well, I went on Amazon the other day and I was ordering something else, but for $8, I added, it's a set of 3 tie clips, and they're just simple. There's a gold one, a black one, and a silver one. So it'll match whatever color tie you're wearing. And all 3 for $8.
And when you're displaced by a hurricane,
I've been wearing
you
these.
can't be piercing your ties with holes.
But
because you only got a few left.
That's right. To Richard's point, it's just like these are very understated and really, I think whenever you're buying really high quality stuff, like usually it's understated. So this actually looks a lot more expensive than.
It's a minimalist. Yeah. It's a minimalist approach. And anyways, I've just been wearing these every day. And I mean, it sounds dumb, but if you're trying to kick up maybe your style points a little bit, I'm telling you, a tie clip is way better than any sort of tie pin. Like my tie stays exactly where I left it.
Or a paper clip which I've used in a pinch.
That's right. It's not flapping around like some idiot. Like it just looks, it's kicked my, I mean, I'm not saying I have any style, but at least my tie doesn't look like an idiot anymore.
But to talk about men's fashion,
I like the black one.
Well, yeah, no, and I'm digging the black one's really understated, and then silver and gold, like that'll go with anything. But talking about men's fashion just in a global sense, it's all about the accessories. It's all about having these little things that it's all about your, I wear cufflinks with my shirts. And it's all about the understated cufflink. It's all about the tie clip. It's all about those little bitty things because
it's all about the socks.
Oh, dude, I love my socks. I love my talk. As Billy Crystal calls them, the talk show socks. I love my talk show socks. So, but yeah, those are cool though. I like that.
Well, these serve.
I like that.
These serve a function, and they're cheap and. Well, they're affordable and they come in 3 different styles, so they match everything you got.
Like for $8 for 3 of them, I mean, they don't have to last that long to still make their money's worth. But I mean, they're pretty durable.
I've been rocking them for 2 weeks. Hasn't broke yet.
There you
2
go.
2 weeks, 2 cups of coffee.
2 weeks,
pretty much. 2 lattes.
2 weeks.
That's
right. Yeah.
I mean, $8, whatever.
My recommendation won't cost you a thing unless you really like it, and then you have to buy the whole season. But when I was growing up, one of my favorite shows in the world was DuckTales. And exactly.
Yes.
And they have decided to reboot it. And whenever I hear a reboot of a cartoon, I'm like, boo, it's never going to be as good as the original. What are they doing? They're so stupid. Why? I hate this. So I was actually looking online for the original DuckTales, and I came across the first episode of the reboot. This is Disney XD. They released it back in August, but since we've been gone for a while, I kind of missed it. But I wanted to bring this to your attention. The first episode, I'll put it down in the show notes. It's on YouTube in its entirety for free. From Disney XD, so this is legit. It's not a pirated copy. You can watch the whole episode. It's basically 2 episodes because they're 22-minute episodes. And they put the first 2 episodes back to back because it's a 2-parter. So you can watch the whole thing, and it is great. I think that
so 2 episodes.
It's 2 in 1, but I think it's fantastic. I think that they updated it. Right, they kind of took.
Does it still have an opening?
Yes.
With the
no,
song?
You don't get the opening at the very beginning. That's how I know it's 2 episodes, because right in the middle, the episode ends, and then a new episode starts, and it's got the exact same DuckTales theme song. More or less. I think there's
Okay.
a word or two different, but it's
Huh.
because I was singing
I gotta
was singing
say-
along with it, and Leo was like, or my
Yeah.
son was like, what? How do you know this? I was like,
I'm not terribly crazy about this animation style, but I'll give it a watch. Kids probably like it.
it grows on you. Yeah, it's kind of Flash looking, like Flash animation looking a little bit, but it's not too bad. And actually,
Like cartoon strip.
yeah, it's definitely got its own style to it. But I do think that, you watch the old DuckTales, and I've watched a couple of them, and they kind of hold up, but not really in a lot of ways. But this new one though, I feel like it's a good update. It's a good modernization of the characters and of the storyline. Donald Duck's more of a thing in it apparently, which is actually kind of fun. And it's from what because I read up on it because I got all excited about it, and apparently they're going a little closer to the DuckTales comic book series than the TV show. So there's a little bit of a
And maybe
mix
that
match.
art style is
Similar to the art,
the comic book.
to the art style in the comic. Maybe
Okay.
I don't know, but it definitely has its own look, and I have no problem with the art style. I think it looks great, and it's a fun episode. I mean, it doesn't make sense. There's a few plot points that are like, okay, that wrapped up really quickly, but again, it's a
How
kid show.
dare they?
Yeah,
I need fully Donald Duck, Huey, Dewey,
I
Louie,
demand fully fleshed
Scrooge
out
McDuck.
logical scripts.
I need them all to have their.
But if you enjoyed the original one, I think that it's worth a watch, especially because the first 2 episodes, first 43 minutes of the show are free. That's all
What's
that's
next?
out right now.
Tailspin?
So, because
Goof Troop.
I'll take Tailspin. I'll take that.
I'll take
Darkwing
Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck.
Well, it's
I'll
rare
take all
that you actually have good news to report on a reboot / reinvention. So
exactly. That's why I got
Yeah.
all excited about it. Well, I'm hoping to be excited about Discovery. The first 15 minutes I was intrigued by. So hopefully Discovery will be good. But yeah.
winging it back around to
So check
Star
that
Trek.
That's what I do. Well, Richard, now it's time for you to do what you do. Tell us where people can find us.
You can contact us at legionofdads@gmail.com, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, iTunes, or visit legionofdads.com. Like, subscribe, hashtag, do all your stuff.
You kids with your hashtags.
You kids and your pound signs
Yeah.
and your...
What we like to do each week is our last laugh, our dad joke of the week. And if you have a dad joke, please feel free to share it on all those things that Richard sent you to. And maybe we'll use your joke. It can't be any worse than the jokes that we pick. So I have the dad joke of the week. Here's my joke. I tried to change my password to beef stew, but it wasn't stroganoff. Crickets.
I'm just going to let you hang there in silence.
Exactly. And with that,
sounds like something a dad would say at the dinner table while he's eating beef stew.
Beef stroganoff. Yeah. And with that, we're out. Good night, Legion.